Well, alright then, let's try and finish this off, part 3, and I know we're only like halfway through the runes, but I think we're beginning to see the patterns here, and it shouldn't take too long to get through the rest. So let's see what we've got, starting with Monk, which pre-patch were kind of the definitive support set. In many regards, it was mainly, really good heal power on there. The boon duration is nice on any support builds, even more boon duration. A randomly semi-randomly procking asset here for a bit more healing, but the T6 is really the main thing. Just 10% benevolence all the time is cool. I remember when this became a thing, I was very excited when this became a thing when benevolence altogether became a thing, and it kind of solved a problem with Guild Wars. There's still a bit of one, which is anytime you built something that was supposed to be really supporty, it automatically made it tanky for itself too, which isn't very good. But Benevolence kind of changed that. It meant that you can heal more, but not yourself, so you were still that little bit more squishy. Anyway, Monk Rune's really good. Come from Ascon Catacombs. Curious to see what they've done. Now, remember, we had, like, regeneration buffs and rune-oriented buffs before. So the idea being, do you pick the newly buffed regen or whatever other support runes there have been? There have been a few, like Flock we saw changed. Or do you stick with Monk? So this is more than strong enough. I wouldn't expect or want this to get any stronger. Maybe even a slight nerf in the name of build diversity. Well, let's have a look. The T4 changed to remove the on-hit effect, which wasn't really that relevant. So a very slight nerf there. But look at what happened to T6 here. I admit, between videos, I spoiled myself on this right at the end of the last one. So they didn't nerf it. They actually buffed it. It's still 10% benevolence. And then on top of that, this clunky-ass mechanic, what was all of this about simplifying and streamlining everything? 1% outgoing healing effectiveness for 3 seconds whenever granting a boon to an ally, max 10. So I love the idea, but to me, this should be the T6 of a different rune set. So you can choose, do you go for Monk, which is the flat bonus all the time, or do you go for the different rune set, which you have to, like, stack, but has a higher cap, it would be, like, 2% on the other set. I don't know why they just straight up power crept what was already basically best in slot for a lot of situations. What that kind of means now is it means all those other support runes we looked at feel like complete duds, because you're definitely going to pick Monk, because now there's another 10% you can get on top. Now, juggling this, the gameplay associated with this seems really fun to me. And I wonder what builds are better at it than others. The ones that are given boons a lot are going to be benefiting more than the flat healers. I just don't understand why it's all on this one rune here. So, yeah. And, immediately, my main thought was this kind of favors Firebrand a bit more over, say... Well, I don't know. See, Druid also puts out a lot of boons, right, through Might. So I guess we'll see. But Firebrand has a lot of multi-boon packets. They do only last for 3 seconds each time. But, this is one of those things where you see it visually in game as well. It's going to appear on your buff bar as a stacking effect with a number next to it. So, that's just, when you get situations like that, they seem very evident and very, very cool. I just think it should have been all on its own. And it didn't need to juggle and just basically power creep this. We'll see what you guys think. Nature's Bounty. To be honest with you, I don't really remember when this came in. Is this a Season 4 thing? A Path of Fire thing? So healing power with diminished Condi duration on you. The T6 is when you use a heal skill, you and nearby allies lose 1 condition. Really boring. In fact, this feels very vanilla. Maybe it's just a renamed vanilla kind of thing. Really kind of boring seeming heal skill, honestly. Looking over here, it's now changed to include another 10% minus incoming condition duration. So a slight buff, but is a completely indistinct feeling rune to me. But hey, I mean, there's synergy with the condition loss and then reduced condition duration. It's like stacked around a theme, certainly. I just think there's better ways of going about this with on-heal effects and whatnot. Moving on, Necromancer. So before it was healing power. I mean, I'm actually mind blown to see this. Is this true? Necromancer runes were healing power stack in the past. Is that true? I thought they were condition damage. I really did. And it says here minus condition duration, which I guess is kind of necromancy, master of condition, manipulation. And then the T6, when you use a heal skill, you and nearby allies lose a condition. This isn't right. This is not what old Necromancer Runes is. This is just copied from this column. Wiki has, or the patch notes has written this out incorrectly. This is not what Necromancer Runes used to be. Let's look at post-patch anyway. Yeah, there was so it's now condition damage, vitality, and 20% fear duration. I think the fear duration was on there before. This is written wrong. I'm pretty sure that this is not new. This is new. I think that all that's changed with Necromancer Runes is the 125 condition. I feel like this is slightly... what I want is a really good rune set revolving around fear, and then I want the devs to actually... a few balance patches ago, the devs said that they buffed the Necromancer trait Terror, which means your fear does damage, and it was in the patch notes and stuff, and it's on the tooltips, but the actual effect was not implemented. So what I would like to see is they actually implement the change, and then maybe you would look at Necromancer Runes to an extent, because that's, you know, that's a heavy hitter there with the bit of fear duration on it too. But I feel like the fear duration could do with being a bit higher. I know they've given it the 20% number because that's what all the boons, all the conditions get. But this is a situation where parity is not necessarily good design, because fear is such a spiky condition, so short-lived. 20% on 1 second application condi, or even less than that, you know. Oh, I'm getting an extra quarter of a second. I'm getting an extra eighth of a second. It's not enough, you know. So I feel like this could be a bit higher, but it's very necromancy. It's just a tiny buff here, though. I think it's that additional packet of condition damage there, which only exists because they power crept all the others with an additional thing on the T6s. So they've just kind of made more work for themselves. This isn't any more distinct or in more of a niche of its own now. It's just they had to do the work because they did the work with everything else. Moving on, you got Nightmare Runes. So coming from Twilight Arbor, always been a really good rune set. The condition damage, you know, you'd often juggle the first two on a PvE set with others. Condition damage and duration all stacked together. Like, this is beautiful, really, really nice. And then down here, we've got, when you use an elite skill, deliver an attack that blinds enemies and transfers one condition. It used to be, I think, that this was a heavy transfer. It was like 3 transfers to your opponents, and then they nerfed it, if I'm remembering rightly anyway. So now it's just a blind packet and 1 condi. Post-patch, it's changed a reasonable amount. They subbed the broad condition duration out to just fear. Is that one of the patterns? They don't like the tier 2 being a generic buff, do they? They like the tier 2 being a specific buff, and then the tier 4 is the generic. They seem to have done that very frequently. They have paid a lot of respect to the tiering. I wonder if that means that they're going to care a little bit more about PvE progression and stuff, because there's not really a sense of slowly stacking the runes in the game at the moment. So are they going to look towards that eventually? Anyway, then what you'll also notice here is an extra 10% condition duration. It has been added to the T6 in addition to the old effect, which doesn't look like it's changed whatsoever. You know, I wonder with stuff like this, 10% condition duration is worth way more than just 125 condition damage. But they've both been given to these rune sets in kind of the same way, you know. It's like, oh, here's a little extra cherry on top. But this cherry is way bigger than this one. So I don't know, or is it? I mean, come on, guys. 10% condition duration for everything is worth a lot more, isn't it, than 125 condi damage? Anyway, moving on, we've got Ogre. So I already talked about Ogre a lot in these videos. I love Ogre. I really think that the community doesn't respect or appreciate Ogre because the formats in the game the community cares about, you know, are not the ones where Ogre shines. But this is really one of the strongest rune sets for all kinds of solo play throughout PvE and doing story and leveling and all that kind of stuff. It is just, like, so good. And, well, here's what changed. The 25% chance to summon the Rock Dog on hit has now been added to the final tier, so you have to invest all the way for it. And it's just summon a Rock Dog while in combat. So it will only be 1 Rock Dog ever you get while you're fighting. There is no ICD listed. That's very strange to me. There must be an ICD. I can't spam out Rock Dogs by going in combat and out of combat and in combat and out of combat, can I? So between part 2 and part 3 here, I actually did a stream where we looked at lots of the runes that I'd already covered on the series and actually tested them. So, like, we tested what the artillery barrage looked like, and it was kind of crap, by the way. You know, we tested a lot of different things, but these other runes where there's no ICD listed, like Altruism, remember, is take condis from your allies. I went on a mortar kit NG, and it says no ICD. It has no ICD. And so you could spam it with like purity of purpose and give people quickness for taking slow off of them and stuff. It was really kind of cool. So does this actually mean there's no ICD? Can I flick in and out of combat and just summon an army of dogs? It'd be kind of tricky to do, but a weird idea, and obviously not what the devs want. Anyway, the T4 has now become an extra ferocity packet. So the runes were buffed. And, you know, if I was looking at this in a vacuum, I'd be excited about that. But all the runes were buffed. So, you know, didn't really mean too much. And the equivalent buff this got wasn't actually that major. Moving on, which is good, actually, because, you know, I already respect the power of Ogre Runes so much. So, looking at Ore, Runes of Ore, these, again, were like one of these that gave you quickness when you were low on health. Like Balthazar runes did. I guess the devs thought, oh, Ore was to do with the gods or something. I don't know. 25% chance when struck to cause poison. That's obviously going to change. And it's about poison duration and condition damage. Well, this rune set I've actually been running in PvP. If you go to my second channel and you look at my Game of the Day videos, I have a video, a commentary of me playing a Blood Scourge on Orion runes. Seriously, the new selection is... Oh, I tell a lie. Look, here we've got a generic condition duration minus, when once upon a time it was poison duration increase. So here's what we're looking at. Condition damage, which is nice, but the T2 is reduced condition duration, the T4 is reduced condition duration, and the T6 is reduced condition duration. So overall, you're getting 25% less condition damage thrown on you. With a Condi damage stack. And I really like that combo. I think it's really good for any kind of high vitality, attritive, likely to get Condied hard. On a Necromancer, you could say it's kind of bad because you're going to get these Condis hit on you and you might want to flip them onto your opponents, but you've just reduced their duration via your rune, so, you know, and all that other stuff. But with my playstyle, you know, I don't actually run that many transferals in the first place. I really like it. It just makes you feel a lot more sturdy, particularly considering it now has the 10% maximum health on there as well. So this is just a really good, really generic kind of baseline feeling Condi set that feels very sturdy at the same time. You know, you go up to like 27k health on a Necro because you start with a high base vitality pool in the first place. As far as the selections are available in PvP, I liked this, and I've been running on it. So yeah, and it feels less clunky and weird and hodgepodgey than what Ore used to be. You know, it's the quickness is gone, the poison and stuff is gone. So yeah, I guess there's something significant, by the way, in this, that the Orion rune was a way of getting poison on your build, even though your class or your build was not supposed to do it just yet. But it was so unwieldy, I've never actually been in a situation where I've tried it out and relied on that. But it tunnel visioned you into Condi damage anyway, so whatever. Moving on, we got Pack. I really like Pack as well. Pack is kind of a rune before its time. I'll tell you why. It's power, so straight away, it's got some possibility. The T2 swiftness duration feels pretty much like a dud. But the T4, when struck, grant yourself and allies might, fury, and swiftness. This is essentially Thrill of the Crime for thieves before it was buffed recently to be 3 might instead of 1. But, you know, it was like, have Thrill of the Crime, just activate. And this was good, you know, juggling that extra bit of fury onto your builds really meant something. The other stuff didn't so much. But, and then lastly, so the T6 was swiftness duration. But look at this, an extra packet of precision here. So, I say it's a rune before its time because you might look at this and not be impressed right now. But there are very few runes that offered this much in the way of raw attribute before. You know, it was it was a pure power stack. So it was like, you're not compromising on power. And then you get extra crit chance at the end. And it was just, and you know, with the Fury, there was some synergy there. This was really worth something. If you were trying to play a power-heavy build, but you felt like you really wanted to get those crits in, there you have it. And I would run Pack a lot. But now, you know, we see this extra 125 on nearly all the T6s now, or, you know, an equivalent amount. So let's see what it's changed to. Well, it's still power stack, which is nice. You still get your 125 precision at the end, which is nice. The swiftness duration turned into boons, which is good. And then more boons here. And your Thrill of the Crime proc is now grant nearby allies 5 might. Whoa. Fury and swiftness for 10 seconds when entering combat. I mean, and that's just so much more. And the cooldown is lower, 10 seconds lower. That's so much more reliable. Unlike with some of these other runes, Like the Earth Rune, which is, you know, get that Earth aura pretty much straight away, or the Meadow that we saw before, where they're defensive. The defensive asset from those, triggering right at the start of the fight, is often a little bit wasted because the fight just began. You don't necessarily need a lot of defensive procs right at the beginning. It's, you know, they're just going to get blown for no value. However, when you look at pack runes, get starting an engagement instantly with 5 Might Fury Swiftness is huge. Really, really valuable. There's a lot of power. Well, there's some power builds that don't that struggle with the Fury and struggle with getting access to that stuff. And I'm not just talking one-shotty style things. I'm talking there's a lot of builds that can get a lot of value out of Fury that otherwise don't really have access to it. And here, I mean, it lasts 10 seconds. The cooldown's 20, right? It will drop, but if you're thinking competitive modes, it kind of doesn't matter, guys. Like, this is really good. This is very, very, very powerful. And they made it 5 might. So, Thrill of the Crime for a long time was 1. And on the rune it was 1. Then they buffed it to 3 recently on the traits. And now, for the Rune Overhaul, they've not equalized it again, which would have been the intelligent thing. They've gone even further. They whacked it up to 5. Maybe they weren't thinking about, you know, the trait it was based on or whatever before. But Jesus Christ. Or did Thrill of the Crime go all the way to 5 and it's me that's wrong here? Anyway, I love the look of these. The skillful... This is the pure distilled, exactly what the Rune Overhaul, in terms of random chance on strike effects, was trying to change. And the life that it's breathed into this rune set beyond all others, I think is perfect. This is immaculate. And you get your little bit of precision on there too. Even a bit of buffing on the boon duration. So yeah, I enjoy this. Next, let's look at Perplexity. Hideously OP. Or it was back in my day when I was last playing a lot of World vs. World. The Confusion rune set. Confusion duration, condition damage, 25% chance to confuse people when you're getting hit. And somehow this always felt like it was like really powerful, even though it's pretty much just the equivalent of the other stuff. It's probably because it was at 3 stacks. And then when you use a heal skill, 3 confusion in an area, just so strong. Hasn't actually existed in balanced competitive play for a long time. So how have they changed it? Well, this reads a lot cleaner now, obviously. Confusion duration, condition damage. The T4 has gone completely, and the confusion on heal has gone completely. I think that's for the best. I don't know where this has been seated World versus World-wise power level recently, but I like the way this looks on the page a lot more. It's a lot less random effects. Here's the thing. For me, buildcraft should be different areas of your build coming together to synergize. I don't think that individual aspects of your build should provide their own synergies, if that makes sense. So what the old Perplexity did was it said, okay, you're all about confusion damage, and here's a ton of ways to inflict confusion as well, you know? And I'm not saying you'd actually run a Perplexity build without any of your own confusion aspects, but I don't think that the purity is there. Here, I think it exists. Here, it's like, all right, here you get a ton of confusion stuff. Do you have a build that can inflict confusion? Great, run this rune set. The two come together to create something, right? And I think that that's really what strong buildcraft is. It doesn't have to provide its own win condition. And so, yeah, I really like this now. And the new benefit, instead of splashing out confusion, it's reduced damage from confused foes. So I love this. I think there's so much clarity here. I think this looks good. And I'm all for this change. If anything, actually, it's probably a bit of a nerf. Definitely, offensively, it's a nerf to the rune set. But I think the spirit of it is now much better. And I like that. Moving on, we've got Privateer. So this is another one a bit like Flock. So it's power stack, automatically makes it alright. Might duration on a power stack, automatically makes it alright. The T4 was a weird one. 25% chance when struck to shout Yar and gain 3 stacks of might to nearby allies. Now, this is a funny one to look at. I don't know what they've changed about this, but this is going to be funny to look at considering we just saw Pack. And then the T6 was like the Rock Dog, right? 50% chance to summon a parrot. Wow, the nomenclature there is really weird. A 50% chance on what? Getting hit? Hitting them? Anyway, the parrot I've had some fun moments of in the past. Once upon a time, the devs did a AI buff in PvE where they like doubled the health of minions and made them hit harder or something. Or maybe it was a phantasm change, except it affected the parrot as well. And for a hilarious week or so, parrots could, like, do ungodly damage in PvP, and it was just the best thing in the world to run privateer runes, because you would summon this thing that would actually maul people. It was like playing a Beastmaster Ranger with everything spec'd to make your bird hit really hard. So yeah, curious what they've done with this. Well, they've gone deeper into the might duration and the power. That all looks really good and clean. Then the T6 is now, the second you start combat, shout Yar, granting 5 stacks of might to nearby allies for 10 seconds and summoning a parrot. I like this. This is good. Compare this to Pack a second ago. Do you want Fury and Swiftness, or do you want a bird? I think that's cool. You know, the might is the same. It's for allies, the same duration. Mind you, this thing cools down a lot slower. By pairing the Yar with the parrot, it punishes the boon application side of it. But, you know, I really like the flavor of this as well. This will feel great, like, gameplay-wise. You run into aggro your opponent in Verdant Brink, and your character shouts Yar as, like, a battle cry as they move in, and summons a bird as they shout Yar. It's like, you know, you pair the Yarring with the bird. That's just gonna feel good, trust me, in Engine. That's very, very cool. That'll be a choice pick for new players, I think. Fun one to run around in PvE with. Very cool. Next, we got Radiance. So this is kind of like an aura share rune set. I actually run this on occasion in fractals and things. So it's Vitality stack, which has always felt a bit iffy because you'd rather that be healing power or whatever if you're going to be as an aura sharer. But hey, I won't go into the disconnecting attributes from perk discussion again. When you receive an aura, gain a bit of swiftness. Kind of minor, but, you know, a fun little thing. When you use a heal skill, gain light aura. Now, this is nice because as an Ellie, aura sharing, you don't really have your own applications of light aura, you know, baked in with yourself. So to use this gave you that elusive 5th and final aura, you know. So that was nice. And then the T6 was obviously really cool. The durations of auras you apply are increased by 33%. People are reflecting for 33% longer. Shocking aura lasting 33% longer. You know, gaining the benefits of the might juggling from the fire aura or whatever. It's really nice for an aura share. Nice, pure kind of idea for a rune. Let's see what they've done with it. Well, it looks like they removed the light aura, which makes me... So here's a difficult one. I like these for their efficacy. So here's the thing. I guess I have to unpack. I have to be unbiased here. It's probably a good thing that the light aura is gone and that they keep that pure with light fields and with, you know, the Guardian and whatever's supposed to be applying it. You know, keep it condensed in there. It is curious to me that they removed this light aura while they were adding the auras for the elemental ones. You know, like... So why is it the elemental auras are available on rune sets, but light aura is now not? The swiftness I don't really miss. Turning it into boon duration is a nice, safe way of, you know, keeping the rune set strong. And in fact, that's a lot of boon duration on there. You get the full 25% boon duration there, which has synergy with aura sharers, you know, because you're putting out boons at the same time. This will make sure your protection lasts longer or whatever. And the T6 still has the aura increase. So... yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen light aura on there somehow. If it was gain light aura when you enter combat, I think that could have been very cool. Like, very, very, very cool. But maybe the devs felt that was too strong. Probably would have been too strong and a bit too iffy, you know, in terms of the effects that light aura actually gets. You don't want people bouncing that around straight away. So, yeah, okay. Radiance. That's an interesting change, but I can see the logic behind it, and I'll get with it. Rage. Basically, the Fury set. It was about Fury duration, gain Fury when struck, Fury duration, while under Fury do extra damage, and beautifully, it's a Ferocity stacker, right? Which is good, because, you know, the flavor of Fury is crit more, so give us higher crit damage. You know, efficacy matters aside, that seems really cool. I like the way that rolls into itself. Let's see what the devs have changed. Well, it still gives you Fury, Ferocity, sorry. It still gives you Fury duration. They've changed the T4 into guaranteed Fury when entering combat. Now, you might be comparing that with Pack. This is on the 4th slot, so it should be a little bit weaker, I guess. But when you really look at it, it's 8 seconds of duration for 10-second cooldown. You're going to have a little bit of Fury duration from the runes themselves. So I think this is just Perma Fury, basically. Well, no, it's not Perma Fury because you only get it once, right? It doesn't refresh on the cooldown. The way this is designed, it really feels like the devs want this refreshing when the ICD's up, doesn't it? Because basically, this is going to be 10 seconds of Fury on a cooldown of 10 seconds. I mean, that's such a cool idea as well, right? Like, okay, we're going to have a rune set that's about a boon, and by equipping the rune set, you just have that boon on you all the time. I know I was talking about runes not providing their own win condition, but if that's the entire idea of the rune set, it's kind of a thrilling thought, right? But actually, I guess this is kind of clunky and weird now, because how many engagements are you going to have that are over in 10 seconds and then getting into another new one? Like, this cooldown of 10 seconds is kind of irrelevant, because the circumstance for you proccing it right on that 10th second coming around is going to be so low. Anyway, then also here, you still have the 5% extra damage while under Fury, which, you know, maybe would be too much for something that just keeps Fury on itself all the time. But generally speaking, it seems to have had the regular treatment, and power-wise, it's not really much different from where it was before. You control the Fury a little bit more. In a lot of ways, I would compare this to Pack, because they're both doing something. They're both offering you Fury where you didn't have it in the past on your build, you know, guaranteed at the start of a fight. This one being, well, and it depends how the ferocity and stuff goes. But okay, so moving on, we've got the ferocity versus power, I mean. Next, we've got Ratasum. So, spoilers, I did see in-game what this is, and it's kind of mind-blowing and weird. So, to talk about Ratasum for a second, this is a really prominent rune. It doesn't exist competitively, because of the T6. 50% chance when struck to summon a radiation field. Now, it's on a 90-second cooldown, but this is the full-on Asura racial skill, radiation field. So, you know, we've seen an artillery barrage in the update here, newly. Well, there was already a racial skill on a rune. It was here. And the radiation field, if you guys don't know what it is, it's poison and weakness in a big AoE as well. So, it's a punishing 90-second cooldown. But poison and weakness are really important, like, techie things. Builds that don't have poison, that can now get it to allow them to cleave through bodies and stuff. This was, like, super... And weakness as well. This was a weird one as well, where it was, like, on strike, 50% chance. It was actually useful as an on-strike effect, because someone attacks you, you dump the radiation field next to you automatically, and that weakens them, and now their attacks do less damage, and you can hide in the field. So it was really good. You know, just two very, very, very powerful conditions that builds otherwise might not have had any access to. And for these reasons, you know, it's been removed for a long time now, so you might... Its relevance is kind of limited in Guild Wars anyway at this point. Precision as well, with poison duration and weakness, has always felt weird. But, you know, the poison and the weakness duration is for the field, and then it's a precision stacker for whatever reason. I'm always so unexcited by precision stackers. Well, not always, but quite often. So what have they changed it to? Well, you'll notice that this is all pretty much the same. You get an extra 10% condition duration on everything on top. And then you'll see that the T6 has changed. I don't know what this looks like. I've just read it before. Summon a gamma ray field that grants might on combat entry. With a cooldown of 60 seconds. So this is going to be like these other ones we've seen recently that give you like Fury on combat beginning. I don't know what the gamma ray field... What is that going to be? Is that going to look like an orbital strike? I really don't know what that's going to be. A 60-second cooldown. You might think that that's really punishing and bad, but again, all these on-combat entry things, I actually think that will still feel reasonably, you know, accessible and fine. I wonder what... But this is going to be weird if I enter... When you're entering combat, you're moving. You're using W, S, and D, right? You're throwing projectiles or getting hit with projectiles as you move forward. And... if this now summons a long-rolling AoE where I have to stop my cavalry charge into my opponent to stand still as the laser beam hits me, I mean, I don't know. And how much might is it worth? Maybe you guys could tell me. It does sound cool, though. Gamma Ray. New skill added. Gamma Ray. I mean, that sounds good, right? So we'll see. Next, you got Reaper Runes. Toughness and power. Thematically fitting with Reaper, I would say, actually. You know, in terms of what it was supposed to be pure, you know, this horrifying movie monster that just keeps aggressing you. And then they had, when you shout, you chill around you. And again, a bit like the Ratasum runes, this is a thing because it's like, oh, I can get chill even though I'm a warrior and I shouldn't really have chill. I mean, there's been other ways, obviously, like hydromancy sigils and stuff. But, you know, like for that reason, it's kind of a thing. But this has always been and I like the idea of it, you know. Reaper's got shouts, and then shouts are what's getting buffed here, and chill application, and Reaper gets so much benefit out of chill. If you're playing a Reaper with the Reaper runes, it should feel good. The thing is, Reaper shouts have always been a bit poo, so that's meant that running the rune synergy has always been a bit poo too. But also, chill nearby foes for 1 second. The 1 second has never really felt like enough, and the point blank AoE on it has never really felt like enough. I think it should be one or the other. It should be like a more forgiving point blank AoE, and then yes, definitely keep it at 1 second, because chill is very, very powerful. Or it should be like 2 seconds and the really punishing range, you know? I mean, it says 360 radius. It's just in-game, this has never felt like enough. I've tried it many times, on many different builds, actually. Thinking, oh, yeah, is this enough to allow me to gap close and finish someone off? But it just very rarely, it never is. I say very rarely. I've never successfully gap closed off of the chill from this to kill someone who's fleeing from me, you know, and secure the win. So, yeah, I just feel, I like it all. I just think that the T6 should be buffed a bit. Let's see what they do. Well, you get the extra toughness, rounding out the double attributes, so that's nice. And they kept the active exactly the same. So, not what the rune needed. I don't think there's been... here's the thing with this Rune Overhaul. It doesn't feel like the devs did individual assessments for the runes, does it? And I might regret saying this, it also feels like they don't play enough of the game or test these runes themselves to have opinions already about them, you know? Or if they do have opinions, they're not acting on them. You know, I as a Guild Wars nerd that plays all the time, I have experiences with Reaper Runes that I can immediately draw from and be like, oh, this is what I think it needs. It feels like the devs kind of, for a lot of these, don't have that. So they're just, you know, they're just bringing it in line with all the other stuff, you know. And now it feels limp. It's like, oh, well, what was the point in the update? But it's just to bring it up to everything else they did. I don't know. Anyway, who am I to judge? Let's move on. Rebirth Runes. I don't really remember these. Ah, they're a Path of Fire set, I see. Okay, so it's concentration and healing power. Immediately, the concentration looks weird because everything else, they're just going boon duration now. So I would expect this to change. It's funny, I guess with the expansion, they wanted these runes to be concentration instead of boon duration. But this has got to change, right? There's no way they'll leave this as concentration. That will turn into boon duration, right? Healing power. And then I remember this actually from before POF came out. Weren't these mind or something? Ignore the next lethal blow and gain barrier. So this is like rebound. But I never actually played with this in the end. And I don't think the barrier was worth that much. But it's a very, very... exciting idea for a rune, you know, save your life at the last second and sort of rebound back into it with a better barrier. Let's see what the devs did. Yes, they got rid of it as concentration. They turned it into boon duration. That's nice. You get an extra bit of healing power on the end, and they've left the T6 the same. So I guess whether this is actually worth anything is entirely going to be based on the strength of the T6. And since I don't really have any experience or understanding of people testing it out, I'm guessing it's not very good. Oh well. And a 90-second cooldown for that is totally appropriate, I think. In fact, I would even bump that up. If you're actually going to make it worth something, I would bump that up. I'd make it like once every 2 minutes or something. Because that would... This is the kind of thing where if it gets too strong, it's going to be really frustrating. You know, you're fighting someone in World vs. World, and you get the kill fair and square, but all of a sudden this trait procs. It's going to feel frustrating. I mean, they've been fighting at a power deficit because they essentially don't have a rune set to compete with you when you do have one. Anyway, moving on. Resistance runes. Toughness, reduced condition duration. When you activate a signet, you gain Aegis for 8 seconds. Interesting idea. With a rune like this, an idea like this, what you want is to then run a ton of signets, right? To get as much value out of it. But it's got a 30-second cooldown. Now, that 30-second cooldown might be justified because Aegis is super strong, right? And blocks on demand are super strong, so maybe it's justified. But because of this, I think the entire thing comes down like a house of cards. And just the whole idea, the concept is not workable. If it has to be at a 30-second ICD, from a buildcraft standpoint, I'm a bit bored by it. Let's look over here. We've got toughness. So hold on, by the way, here. Would a Mesmer running Signet of Inspiration, when they pop the Signet, would it give them Aegis and insta-share it out? I wonder, you know, just out of curiosity. Anyway, over here, it looks like everything's the same. You get an extra 10% reduced condition duration, pretty standard, and then they left the T6 as it is. I have all the same things to say about that as the other example we looked at a second ago. Revenant Runes. I've always liked Revenant Runes. Just tons of stats, and then 2 seconds of resistance when you use a heal skill on a 10-second cooldown. So this is really good. Recently, I've been trying out mending the warrior heal skill on a physical build. Just because you can drop the cooldown on that to so low. Like, it cools down in 12 seconds, so you can just keep bandaging yourself. Bandage, 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 bandage. And cleansing conditions every time. Revenant Runes are really nice with that, because it means you bandage and give yourself resistance constantly. Well, for the buff, it's pretty much exactly the same as it was before, except you get this extra packet of plus 18 to all stats here. So this is kind of amazing to look at, actually, now. It's like, hey, Divinity Runes, but also resistance on heal skill. I'm curious to see what happens with those. So, yeah, plus 18 to all stats. Just a really nice, all-rounded... in terms of tying this to Rev, I kind of despise. Like, why is that Revenanty? But hey, I think it's got a place in the game as a rune set there. Sanctuary. So, these went through some changes over the years. First of all, they're vitality stackers, which, you know, limits its application in the game as it stands. Vitality is uninteresting as it is. Bit of boon duration on there. When you get struck, gain retail. Now, that's pretty prominent. Retail is the kind of thing that an on-struck effect is... you know, something to think about. You guys may remember years ago, I did a video where I went to Edge of the Mist with just like 2 friends. And what we'd do is, while they were karma training in there, we would have one very tanky ally run onto the node that the entire enemy Zerg was on, and then they'd obviously stand there killing you because you're preventing their cap. And while they fight the tanky guy, you'd have like Bassi venomed meteor showers exploding onto the entire Zerg, and you could just wipe entire Zergs. You know, you could like do 3 or 4 v50s. It was very, very, very fun. It was a controversial video to an extent because people didn't like that we were going against the Karma train and actually PvPing in Edge of the Mist. Anyway, one big lesson I learned from that all those years ago, as it was now, is the power of retaliation on struck. See, all warriors back then were defense, and they would get free retail when they hit a certain health threshold. And just that all on its own would be enough to just kill the Ellies casting Meteor Showers and Glyph of Storms and Ice Bows and stuff. It would just kill you because, you know, that's the kind of thing that retail is for the game, you know. Very punishing on multi-packet attacks and stuff. And that's still as relevant today as it ever was, you know. So having that on a rune, any class has that available, not just the guards, not just the defense warriors or whatever. It's a thing, but only 4 seconds of it on a 30-second cooldown is very low. You can see why the devs have been so conservative about it, because retail is such a prominent thing. But it feels a bit crap, right? Any tiny duration with a long cooldown on a chance when struck, it's going to feel way too clunky. Anyway, and then finally you got T6. Below 20% health gain stab. We've already discussed how vulnerable you are when you're below 20% health. And if Infiltration Runes giving you stealth was not enough to feel good, a single stack of stability is not either. And especially not on a 1 minute long cooldown. So just clunky as hell. Now, I think way back when, Sanctuary Runes used to have, when struck below 20% health, become a block of ice, which made you invulnerable for 5 seconds, which was huge. People were kind of bad at the game, but, you know, if that was in the game still at this point, think about how, you know, Firebrand supports can so comfortably heal up Elixir S engineers that go into Auto S. Can you imagine these? 5 seconds of luxury to just heal the guy back up? Oh my god. Anyway, so what have the devs done now? It looks like it's changed a lot. The retail on struck is gone completely. It was too clunky, and I think that's fine. We're looking at boon duration instead now. And wow, what is this? T6, gain a barrier equal to 20% of the value of incoming heals. Wow. No, I gotta be honest, guys. I really like the look of this. I mean, 20% is kind of low. Gain a barrier on incoming heals. So if I play a support, I don't splash out barrier on my heals, do I? I mean, I would. That sounds very fun, but I would be against that. That feels like that should be like a Scourge Grandmaster, and that's it, you know. But and then they'd have to tweak it and figure out how it works. But gain a barrier equal to 20% of the value of incoming heals. Man, so that well, maybe I'm a bit too excited about this, because isn't this essentially like saying heals are 20% more effective on you? But it's a little bit better than that, because barrier stacks over your max health. So, wow, hold on. So on Sanctuary Runes, if I'm supporting like a Scourge and he's on Sanctuary Runes, can I not like overheal him basically, right? I can splash my heals on him even when he's at 100% health. And will that stack him up barrier until we're prepared early in the game, in the fight, before he's even begun the fight? He can be at an extra 50% maximum health. Is that a thing? Because you can keep juggling barrier. Doesn't this mean that barrier never really drops off of you, because lots of little heal packets can heal you up? What if I'm a blood scourge and I keep getting little heals from vampirism packets? Does that give me tiny little barriers, you know, little flea-sized barriers constantly sticking to me? But importantly means that my existing barrier never disappears. I really want to play with this. It's a shame it's stuck on Vitality. But, you know, Vitality has inherent synergy with the idea of barrier, because barrier will at its deepest will count for more the more max health you have. The boon duration feels a bit awkward. I really want to see how sturdy you feel with that. It's not going to be anywhere near as exciting as it is in my dreams, is it, guys? Has anyone played with this? Please. I keep prompting you to leave comments, right? There's so much I want to see people talking about. This, I want to see you talking about. Come on, guys. Someone tell me. Has anybody played with Sanctuary Runes? All right, moving on. Scavenging. Just a really good baseline strong Condi set. I think a lot of contemporary modern-day Scourges in PvP actually run this. Condi damage. 25% chance to steal life, I'd expect this to go away. After using a heal skill, steal life, I'd expect this to go away. But it was the T6 that was really interesting. Some of your vitality is converted to more condition damage, you know. So not the best, actually, in my opinion, but a good, solid rune choice. So they've changed the on-struck effects into vitality, which they've done because the T6 is still here. And they're saying, well, look, get some vitality. It's providing its own win condition, as you can see. We see the devs doing all the time. And very peculiarly and randomly, the extra bonus is poison. Why? Scavenging? What's poisonous about scavenging? Why? This is what... Why? I don't get it. Why wouldn't that just be like the 125 condition damage? Very odd. So now they're saying that really to get max value out of this rune set, you should be a poison applicator. Who knows what the logic is there. Scholar! You might think because this is such a mainstay of the game, I have a ton to talk about, but I really don't. They did have the preview with it. Scholar is already best in slot for so many scenarios, for what so much of the community is interested in at the moment. So what have they done? Well, they took the T6 and halved it, so it's now only 5% damage instead of 10, and they give you ferocity instead. So on the preview, I actually levied some fairly heavy criticisms at the devs for this. In principle, if you look at this in a vacuum, I don't like this, because what the devs have basically said is, okay, your reward for successfully staying super healthy and playing into the Scholar Runes is now less. It's now less important you consider your rune in your playstyle. You just get that damage for free. You always have the 125 ferocity, and the defining aspect of the rune, don't worry about that. It's not important. And that I don't like. I think that different areas of your build should be things we consider as we play. That's the spice of the game, isn't it? And so to kind of, what they're doing is they're hand-waving the distinct part of Scholar, and I think that that's lame. I think that's so lame that the alternate way, the more cynical, casual, normal comment you see on the internet is, oh, they're making the game easier for the casuals, so you don't actually have to be good. You just get the buff all the time. I'm not twattish enough to actually feel that way, but the general premise that they want to lower the relevance of the boon, of the rune in your moment-to-moment gameplay, I don't really like the idea of. But that's looking at it all in a vacuum. What I now see in context of the whole release is I think basically what the devs have done is they've pushed themselves into a place where they nearly always have to tack on this extra bit of power creep, right? So they've tacked on the extra bit of power creep in accordance with the rest of the release, And now they've thought, okay, well, Scholar's way too strong with the extra power creep. How do we nerf it? And then they've lopped 5% off. Their decision to lop 5% off of the top end of instead of increasing the threshold is the real discussion there. But maybe they felt that playstyle wise, there's no real difference between being at 90% or 95% or 100%. So they've just done it this way, and they've just lowered the damage potential, which is what they needed to do, right? So in the context of the whole release, I think I can see a bit more why it ended up a bit ugly. There you go, Scholar, and I still think people will still run Scholar, because, I mean, come on, it's power and ferocity with still a really good perk at the end. So, moving on, we're looking at Scourge Runes now. So, healing power, condition damage, healing power, condition damage, healing power, condition damage. It's always been a bit of a weird mix of attributes. You know, a Scourgy, appropriate for Scourge, but a weird mix of attributes. And then the T6 is also Scourgy, but gain barrier when you are struck below half health, 75-second cooldown. This was not enough barrier to justify this. I've never really heard people running this. It's not even share that barrier out to your allies, right? Which would have meant that, you know, the healing power meant that the barrier you got would scale harder, but still. Looking over here, it's still a weird mix. They double dipped on the healing power there, which I find funny. They could have double dipped on the Condi damage. Then it's like they're making a further statement about what Scourge is supposed to be there, isn't it? And here they've changed it to the 75% health threshold, which means it will proc a little bit more frequently. The cooldown's still just as much. That's not an actually significant barrier amount, is it though, right? So, I don't know about this. Next, Runes of Speed. Now, I don't actually know what's happened with Runes of Speed getting into this here, but a lot of people have been discussing it for some reason. So let's see. Vitality, Swiftness Duration. This is about as lame as it can feel for runes right now to me. Vitality is like one of the least interesting attributes you could look at. Swiftness Duration is the least interesting boon duration increase you could look at. And what do we have here? I mean, look at this. This is so... But Rune of Speed does have the passive constant 25% move speed, which did make it, you know, important for the game, because in the past, there were a lot of classes, and a lot of the standard builds and worthwhile things didn't really have access to this constant 25% move speed. So, you know, for a long time, if you were like a Mesmer in World vs. World, you would seek to get that 25% move speed from your runes. Not actually speed, you'd probably go Traveler for other reasons, because, you know, Traveler had other stuff. But, you know, the idea of a rune that gets you to that 25% baseline was very important in the past. Nowadays, you know, Mesmers, if they run Chrono, they get the 25% movement speed, or their Signet of Inspiration can pulse Swiftness out for them, or Guardian was the other one that was missing it, and now DH gets it passively with one of their traits as long as their F2 hasn't been used. You know, it's now everywhere in the game, and even further, when we look at PvE, mounts are in the game, which means even if you don't trait for those things, it doesn't feel that bad. Like, Chrono is not the, you know, the 25% move speed on Chrono is not the be-all and end-all fix. During the Heart of Thorns days, it may have felt that way because everyone started running Chrono. But, you know, when you look at the next expansion and there's a third elite spec to pick, Mirages don't get it. The third elite spec won't get it. It will only be Chronos. Core Mesmers won't get it. And so, anyway, runes like this, it's important that runes like this exist. That Traveler exists, Speed exists. It's just that everything else that was paired with this was poo, so you never really found people run it. All of that said, so what's changed? Vitality, Swiftness Duration, Vitality, Swiftness Duration. So this is exactly the same and still really lame. Oh my god, what? Oh my god, Swiftness grants plus 66% movement speed. Where was this when I was looking at Centaur? Oh my god, so they did do it. 66%. Hold on. Does that mean that Swiftness is 66% stronger than it was before, thus meaning it's now a 40% modifier instead of a 33% modifier? I hate how much I'm talking about numbers here. Or does it literally mean Swiftness grants 66% movement speed? Okay, if it is exactly as that says, and they've doubled the meaning of Swiftness with speed runes, first of all, that's really exciting. And I'll take all the shit that the rest of the rune set is just to play with this. That's crazy cool. Is this true? This must be why people have been talking about these runes so much. First of all, that's very exciting all on its own. I give you that. But second of all, What led them to such a significant number? You know, why is this so much stronger than, like, Grandmaster traits on elite specializations? That's bonkers. I will have to see how that feels in-game. That is honestly so crazy, and I love it. You want speed? Go for it. And now, actually, it kind of makes the swiftness duration aspects feel a little bit more fun. Maybe you can find a build that only really has one place that it gets swiftness from, but it now lasts long enough that it can you can rely on it, and you get the 66% movement speed. I will have to play with this. That is very, very exciting. Next, we have the Rune of Stars. So is this is this new, or is this renamed from something else? So, +8 to all stats, reduce weakness duration, 12 to all stats, chill and cripple duration, all stats, -10% damage taken from conditions. So, kind of an anti-Condi set that they didn't know what attributes they wanted to throw on it, so they give you all. Not very inspired or techie interesting to me. What have they done here? Well, it's all exactly the same. It's just they've slapped on an additional -10% incoming condition duration as well. So it's the same idea it was always. They just power crept it in accordance with all the other power creep. It doesn't do enough of one thing for me. Like, what situation have I ever been in Guild Wars 2 where I've thought, what I really need is to reduce the weakness, the chill, the cripple, and just general Condi stuff, but I don't really need much damage. And, like, when have I ever thought that, you know? Why would I ever run this instead of Necromancer runes? Do you remember? Orion runes. Do you remember what Orion runes are? It's like 30% to everything. Like, what's the point? So, I don't know. Don't really like this. And, oh my god, I wanted this to be the last part, but I guess it won't be. What are people going to think? This is my return to the channel now. I'm trying to discuss the Rune Overhaul. And it's just going to be 4 videos, 4 mini podcasts in a row of me talking about the rune changes. Jesus Christ. I guess this will be the last one for today's part, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for the final one. But it's an exciting one. Strength. The ultimate might set, right? All about might duration, might application, with power on there as well. The greatest, very, very pure runes. Really cool. Extra damage while under the effects of might duration, 20% chance, 25% chance to gain might. This was kind of irrelevant. Let's see what they've done. They got rid of the irrelevant bit on the T4, as you'd expect. Oh, it's perfect. I love this. This is very simple. This is what I thought they'd all be. That's just in accordance with the pattern, isn't it? That's beautiful. Look at that. Might duration, power, just cut the fat. We didn't need this here, did we? I think not. Well, so there you go, guys. I will see you next time. We're starting with Sunless next time. And looking at my scroll bar on the right, you can't see it on the video, but looking at my scroll bar on the right, it looks like next episode will probably be about the same length again, but we'll have finished them. So I hope you're still getting some enjoyment out of these. I still like reading them out and talking about them. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for the end of it. Cheers, guys. I'm going to look like such a mug saying it's the last part at the start of the video, but whatever. Hey, more content, right? It's a good...